these are some of the issues that are in the book Passion for Truth. It is published by Morrow. So, Pennsylvania Senator Arlen Specter is our guest and the author of Passion for Truth. Before we take a break, and we'll take some calls at 1-800-998-5462, you have, I believe, sponsored legislation to establish a commission on electoral reform in the aftermath of this election. Tell us a bit about what you propose doing.
Well, I believe that the Florida fiasco ought never to be repeated. And I have suggested, and I've put in the bill, that there be a bipartisan commission to take a look at what the technology has to offer today on voting, to get away from dimples and butterfly ballots and hand ballots. Let's find out what the alternatives are, what they cost. Let's consider the balance between states running elections and the federal preeminence on the election of the President of the United States, and let's find a better way to do it.
I assume you'll be holding hearings in the new Congress?
We will be holding hearings, trying to analyze what has happened in the past and how we prevent it in the future.
We'll take some calls for Senator Specter and continue our discussion about his book, Passion for Truth, and about his suggestion for electoral reform. Passion for Truth is published by Morrow. Our number is 1-800-998-5462, 1-800-998-JIMBO, and we'll take our calls after these messages. 1-800-998-5462 is our number, 1-800-998-JIMBO. We're talking with Pennsylvania Senator Arlen Specter, who has written Passion for Truth, a look at some of the fascinating issues that have crossed his career, be it as a district attorney in Philadelphia or as United States Senator. Passion for Truth is published by Morrow, and as we mentioned a moment ago, he has proposed in the wake of this year's election the establishment of an electoral commission which would make recommendations on fixing a number of the errors which have cropped up in the hopes that future elections would not have to be quite as agonizing. Let's talk to Gary in Pomo, California. Good evening, Gary, and welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show.
Oh, thank you very much for taking my call, Jim. And Senator Specter, I have the utmost respect for you.
Well, thank you very much.
I disagree with you, but I certainly respect you, sir.
Well, thank you.
I'll set this. It'll take me less than a minute to set this up. Formerly, I'm with American Express Advanced Technology Group, dealing with imaging as it's related to credit card fraud, having computers called neural nets analyze signatures for discrepancies in the charging history to uncover credit card fraud. Those imaging computers can count 30 ballots a second. They have a pallet that can be set up to accept a ballot. They'll send them through at 30 a second. They make a color image, front and back of the ballot, and microfilm it so nobody can tamper with the image. Then you start telling the computer the rules to judge the ballot. What does it do with a double punch ballot? What does it do with a dimple? When the computer can't make a decision on its own, it stops, holds up the questionable image and says, what do you want me to do with this ballot? How deep does the dimple have to be? What happens with it hanging chad? You get rid of the arbitrary human decisions, holding them up to lights. You can come to a consensus between the Democrats and the Republicans on the million ballots that's sitting in front of the judge's chair.
Well, just to let you catch your breath there, Gary, let me just pose a question to you right now. You sound as though this technology, although not designed for ballots, has already been used on it. Is in fact this tested technology in this application?
Oh, well, it's the same. Neural nets are computers that learn. You just tell them the rules.
But what I'm asking is, has it been used to actually determine contested ballots before?
No, but it sure the heck should be.
Okay.
Computers are perfectly
Well, my suggestion, first of all, would be that since you seem very knowledgeable on this, that you might put together a written presentation to submit to the senator that he might or might not choose to include in the hearings forthcoming. But I
Jim, I think the real issue is whether Gary would agree to be chairman of the new bipartisan commission.
Can I make one other comment?
Yes, you may, sir.
In 1994, I was commissioned by Pete Wilson's office to do a voter fraud analysis of the Los Angeles County voter registration records in the race between Senator Feinstein and Mr. Huffington. That report went in front of a federal judge's bench that stopped the ballot count for 3 days because of alleged voter fraud. Not alleged voter fraud, alleged voter registration fraud. I used a neural net type technology that took every keystroke of every record of the 4.2 million voters in L.A. County. That kicked out about 200,000 duplicate and quadruplicate registered voters. The printout was over 1.5 feet thick that Mr. Huffington said on that judge's
Okay, well, we're not going to, again, go to another monologue, but it strikes me that probably you're the kind of citizen input that Senator Specter might need. I would suggest that you put together a written summation and submit it to his office, that this might be of some use to him.
Jim, I'm very interested to hear what Gary had to say, and I'd like to know more about the technology, and I think that's illustrative of the potential techniques to avoid the Florida fiasco again.
So again, that's Senator Arlen Specter and the United States. What office building are you in?
Hart, Senate Office Building.
Hart, H-A-R-T, Hart Office Building, U.S. Senate, Washington, D.C., and I'm sure he would like to hear more about that. Let's go to Jim in Farmington, New Mexico, and you're on the Jim Bohannon Show with Senator Arlen Specter, the author of Passion for Truth. Good evening.
In a way. In fact, the federal government uses them every day for a very major project. They're called check sorters. The Federal Reserve Bank uses them. I used to work on one for 2 years. I know exactly how they work. If you look at the bottom of your check, you see it's magnetically encoded, and the sorters read those codes and put them into different pockets according to the destination. Ones that can't be read or are sorted to a separate pocket, and then balanced manually by hand on computers, and it's all kept with microfilm records as well, just like the gentleman was saying. So a system like that could easily be adapted to balloting around the country. The problem being having uniform balloting throughout the country. That would require a constitutional amendment. What about that?
Well, it would require a constitutional amendment because currently we leave the control with the states.
Oh, this is Gary. I need to jump in here for a second. The gentleman was wrong in his assessment that you needed to change the ballots. You changed the machines to adapt to every ballot of every county and state in the country. Then you adjust the software to read those ballots. If the software now can identify everything from fingerprints to face recognition, it can certainly read hash marks, black marks, holes, chads, etc. It does not require a constitutional change. Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Primaris Law Hour is brought to you by Primaris Radio 600 KOGO. Welcome back to the Primaris Law Hour. This is Bob Gaglione of Gaglione, Coleman & Green, joined by Fred Schenck of Casey, Gary, Reed & Schenck, and Joe Brannigan from the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we were talking, of course, about the Election 2000 issues. And we've been talking about the Electoral College, and we're going to start taking some calls in just a moment. Again, I'll give out the telephone numbers. If you're in the 858 area code, it's 569-8255, or you can reach us toll-free at 1-800-600-5646. On a GTE wireless, all you need to do is dial pound 600 to call us and join our show. And again, this is a special edition of the Primaris Law Hour. We're on from 1 until 3 today. And let's go now to Santa Maria and welcome Gary to the Primaris Law Hour on News Radio 600 KOGO.
Oh, thank you for taking my call. After I lay out what I'm going to lay out to you, I would hope that either one of your law firms or somebody else would possibly file a friend of the court briefing with the Supreme Court. I don't know whether that's possible or not. I would rather not digress, but that's what I'm recommending. Number one, my background is with American Express Advanced Technology Group, specializing in anti-fraud systems based on credit card fraud. Number two, I was contracted with to do a voter fraud analysis of the Los Angeles County area. That report was a judge that stopped the ballot count in 1994 between Huffington and Feinstein because of alleged voter fraud. I was not called as an expert witness to describe the methodology to the judge behind the data analysis of the 200-some-odd thousand people that were presented as potential suspects for voting more than once. Florida has the same voting system, the same voter registration process as California does, basically based on the honor system. And unfortunately, we have far fewer honorable individuals in this country and both parties than what I would hope it would be. If you're separated by 1,000 or 500 votes out of 6.2 million, you do what's known in the computer industry as a weighted proximity it. They do it with welfare fraud and other areas. Those rolls have never been analyzed where you compare the proximity of every record counting the voter registration date. So if you see the same guy changing his middle initial by one letter, and he registers twice in the same day, which was rampant in L.A., it's rampant in Florida, what the Supreme Court and what both parties are arguing over who is going to win by the most replicated votes by people voting more than once. Number two, when it comes to analyzing dimples, the credit card industry, along with your bank, uses what's known as neural net technology. We take pictures of documents, and it doesn't matter whether that document is a check, a credit card receipt, or a ballot. The machines can be set up to analyze any of them. Then you tell the machine the rules. What is a vote? What is not a vote? You tell it the rules as to how to deal with a dimple or double punch ballots. Once the machine understands the rules, it takes 30 pictures a second. American Express, back where I worked, was doing 2.5 million images every 24 hours. In a day and a half, you can send those ballots through. When the machine doesn't know what to do with a particular ballot, it stops, holds up the image, so you're not constantly handling the ballots with tricky fingernails and drop chads and everything else. Unfortunately, it's too late for that, but once again, they're arguing over people who have voted more than once. How can either party look the other party in the eye and say, look, I don't care how many replicated votes I won by, I won. One party wants to do it through litigation, the other party wants to do it through creative dimple counting.
Gary, thank you for the information. Fred, what do you think about that? You know, Gary raises issues which are very interesting. He's involved in this technology, and one of the things that puzzled me as this story is unfolding is why we don't have the technology that's available in place.
It is an interesting piece of information. I wish people like Gary were involved in this process long before. You know, there probably are votes out there that, aside from the 19,000 that were not cast properly because of the butterfly, I have real questions in my own mind as to what percentage of this vote is accurate and which isn't. And I'm sure the technology is there. Why they're not being applied, I don't know. But perhaps this will be a lesson for the next election cycle, Gary, so that people such as yourself and others can make sure that the process and the technology work hand in hand.
Joe, we've got about a minute before the news break. What do you think about Gary's comment?
Well, I think that that was quite a bit of information that he put out there to us, and I sure appreciate that call, Gary. I agree with Fred. I mean, this is so close. I think what we're seeing in this election is basically exposing the flaws of the system. And when someone wins by a large margin, you don't look too closely at the flaws. But what we have here is pretty much a dead heat in Florida. And we're now trying to figure out exactly who got the most votes. And some people want to go with machine count, some people want to go with hand count, some people want to count the dimples, some people don't.
And perhaps next time around we'll all be on the same page.
Let's hope so.
Well, gentlemen, we already have to get after the news break. If you're on hold, please stay there. We're going to get back to the calls in just a moment. Ken Yearwood's going to give us the latest on the election story and what's breaking. I'm Bob Gaglione with Fred Schenk and Joe Brannigan. You're listening to the Primaris Wire on News Radio 600 KOGO. Break.